hiding gifts from us. One year our parents went to an auction and bought gifts for all us children. They didn't give them to us right away. They hid them somewhere, and I never did know their secret hiding place. When we finally received our gifts, which seemed like forever, I was so excited. They had gotten me a little stove that looked so real. It even had a little oven door that opened with baking racks inside. My sister Ann got a sink, and our cousin Loretta, who stayed with us, got a cabinet. We also got a little table with chairs for all of us to share, and we all got tea sets. My bunny. When I was about 6 years old, two of our uncles, Troy and John, sent a huge box filled with toys for us children for Christmas. I can still remember my excitement at seeing the big package and wondering what wonderful things could be inside. Once the box was open, oh, the joy of seeing all those toys. I remember getting a stuffed rabbit with long floppy ears that I named Bunny. I also got a jump rope, a baby doll, and a few other things. However, my favorite was not the baby doll, it was the rabbit. I played with that bunny constantly, and one day while I was at my playhouse down by the creek, I heard Mommy calling for me to come in. Thinking that I would be right back, I left my bunny laying there. However, while I was in the house, a sudden thunderstorm came up, and I could not go out and get my rabbit. Once the storm was over, I hurried outside to my playhouse, only to discover that my bunny was gone. I was so heartbroken. I searched everywhere for my pal, but it was nowhere to be found. I cried for days. Bunny was like my best friend, and it felt like a part of me was gone. Believe this or not, I even sang a song about it. My bunny lies over the ocean, my bunny lies over the sea, my bunny lies over the ocean, oh bring back my bunny to me. Wild imagination. As a young girl, I had a wild imagination. I remember when there was no road on Deadman's Branch, only a path that we used to walk out of the hollow and back to store, or to catch the school bus. I recall an area along the path that we called the beech timbers. Because large beech and maple trees grew there, I remember feeling almost awestruck as I walked through underneath those tall trees. I just knew that a family of gray squirrels lived high in those giant trees with holes in them, and a rabbit and its babies lived in the hole near the trunk, much like Christopher Robin's 100-Acre Woods. I would often stop and get down on my hands and knees and drink from the little rain-clear spring beside the path. I could always lose myself in my thoughts. Every day I looked forward to seeing where my imagination would take me. Looking back, I realized that it was my way of escaping from the fears of the real world that I was so afraid of. Ann's dress catches fire. One cold, snowy winter day while living in the old cabin on Deadman Branch, I remember my sister Ann standing by the fireplace, turning from side to side to get warm. When one side got warm, she would turn around to warm the other. With her back to the flames, Ann did not realize that her dress tail had caught fire. She had on a little brown dress with a circle tail. I believe it was a Girl Scout dress. Suddenly flames were rolling up Ann's back, and she began screaming in pain. Realizing what had happened, my sister Murray started pounding on the bedroom door to wake our mother. Ann ran from the outside door, but quickly Mommy grabbed her and threw her to the floor, rolling her from side to side to put out the flames. Ann received some terrible burns from her back all the way down on her legs. Things would have turned out much worse if not for Mom's quick thinking. Little Spot. Some of my fondest memories are of our little dog we called Spot. Every evening near the time for Daddy to come home from work, Spot would disappear for about 10 minutes. I would sit out in the yard on a chop block, a big log Dad used for chopping firewood, and watch for Daddy to come home. When he finally came into view, there would be little Spot tagging along right beside him, happy as could be. Somehow Spot always knew when it was time for Daddy to come home. One day Daddy went out into the woods to cut bushes, and our little dog Spot went with him. We knew something bad had happened when we saw Daddy coming carrying Spot in his arms. With tears in his eyes, he told Mom, "I've killed my dog." He said that while he was cutting bushes, little Spot had darted in front of the axe, and it had struck him in the head. There was a deep gash in Spot's head, and blood was pouring from it. Daddy tried everything he knew to make it better. He put alcohol on it and wrapped it up. One morning, a few days later, when we got out of bed, we found Spot slobbering and baring his teeth at us. It was like he had gone mad with rabies. Mommy thought someone had given him dog buttons. Daddy sent for Mom's brother Arthur because he knew little Spot had to be put down and he couldn't do it. That was one of the saddest days I ever experienced in my childhood. Everyone cried, including Arthur, because he loved Spot too and had tried several times in the past to get Mommy to give him the dog. I thought about that for a long time. That was the first pet I ever remember losing. We all loved that little dog. Aunt Melba. It was a tradition in the mountains that when someone died, neighbors and friends would come together and sit up all night with the family. Friends would bring food and the men would dig a hole for the grave. Anytime my parents had to be away for any reason, it was Aunt Melba Sue who looked after us kids. Melba was my mother's sister, and we all loved her and the exciting stories she would tell, and the catchy little tunes she would sing to us, keep us entertained while Daddy and Mommy were away. My sister Sharon recalled the words to one of the tunes she used to sing. Was H a buckle, B a buckle, H a buckle I, H a buckle, B a buckle, huckleberry pie, plus several other little tunes. My Aunt Melba was a very sweet girl with a pleasant disposition. One night when my parents were away and Aunt Melba was looking after us, she waited until it was dark outside and then turned off all the lights inside the house. All you could see was the flickering flames from the fireplace. It was a perfect setting for the scary tale she was about to narrate. We had all gathered around Aunt Melba in front of the fireplace as she began telling us a story. Once upon a time long ago. That's all it took to get my full attention. She was telling us the story of I Want My Big Toe. To a 7-year-old, it was a terrifying tale, but I was drawn to it and had to listen. Everyone's nerves were on edge. By the time she got to about the middle of the story and said, "I want my big toe," suddenly an awful commotion came from the ceiling above us. To our shock, down fell a dark-shaped monster out of the ceiling. I perceived what I thought was the dark figure of an animal. It turned out to be a cat. Somehow the cat had gotten into the ceiling and fell through, hitting the floor right in front of us at the perfect time to scare the dumplings out of us. All of us were screaming at the top of our lungs. After the lights were turned back on and we realized what had happened, we all laughed. What a relief it was to discover it was not the creature coming after its big toe. Because we did not have it, my Aunt Brenda recalled how Melba would pour pop on her big toe and suck it just to make us kids laugh. My oldest sister, Mary Jane, remembers the time when Aunt Melba was playing church with the older kids. She was in the middle of playing the part of a preacher and was preaching to them like Sunday morning church service when her boyfriend, Arnold Bentley, happened along and saw her in the act. Aunt Melba was so embarrassed because she was a young lady always trying to impress her boyfriend. I sure loved my Aunt Melba. She was a wonderful babysitter. I am blessed with two of the best aunts a person could ever have, Aunt Melba and Aunt Brenda. Brenda feels more like a sister to me than an aunt.